So welcome to the first panel of day 2. And today we are discussing Y+ communities, spaces, and social support. So I'm very happy to hear all your presentations. So we will start with Zeynab Peyghambarzadeh. I'm so sorry if I butchered it too much. They have recently finished their PhD research on asylum seekers at the University of Huddersfield in the UK. And they are the co-founder of Spectrum, a queer feminist organization based in France. As part of Spectrum, they also co-founded the Dojinsagara website, the first website on bisexuality in Persian. So Zeynab, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Yeah, today I'm going to talk about a study that I have done as part of my PhD at the University of Huddersfield, which has been in continuous of my bi-activism in our queer feminist organization, Spectrum. The previous studies shows that the percentage of bi applicants among LGBT asylum seekers is almost zero, which reflect the general invisibility of bisexuals. However, recent studies in some European countries and US show although bi-negativity in asylum cases is not as apparent as before, the fear of facing this negative attitude still impact the advice that asylum seekers may receive, and consequently the way that bi-applicant may reveal their sexual orientation in the asylum process. As a result, more studies are needed to see if the situation has improved in other SOGI asylum accepting European countries, Canada, and Australia. As the first extended empirical study about asylum seekers, I interviewed with 16 Iranian LGBTQ asylum seekers in Turkey, 4 Turkish aid providers, and 1 Iranian activist. And I used interactive narrative analysis. I considered context at different levels, and I also used linkage methodology. So I considered past, present, and future. And part of my research was also about Persian Twitter, but I'm not going to talk about it today. I identified 5 interconnected by counter-narratives which form a vicious cycle of bi-erasure. Instability is in contrast to dominant narratives of a stability of sexuality, which result in questioning the authenticity of bisexuality by others and themselves, which result in questioning their belonging to LGBT communities and deservingness to access to protection and resources by others and themselves, resulting in invisibility of stories about bisexuality. But invisibility of bisexuality makes it difficult to understand and talk about the fluidity of sexuality, which again result in questioning the authenticity of asylum cases and their belonging to belonging of asylum seekers to the community. So when it comes to instability, asylum seekers may have different strategies of passing versus voluntary disclosure. For example, Fariman, a bi+ queer person, who initially registered as a heterosexual trans man, said, "I knew that I was queer and I knew that I did not want to go through surgery. I wouldn't tell them because I knew it could confuse them." In Farimon's example, we can see testimonial smothering of bisexuals, how they self-silence themselves, anticipating that their audiences cannot understand them. However, Hannah had a different strategy. As a bi woman, initially registered as a heterosexual trans woman, she contacted asylum authorities to let them know before her interview that her understanding of her sexual orientation had changed because she was afraid of being accused of lying. When it comes to authenticity, asylum system reproduced a binary understanding of fake versus real asylum, real sexual orientation. Ali, a queer person, said there is a collective feeling that bisexuals are only misusing this case and this situation. Saman, a heterosexual trans man, said, "Asylum authorities have heard too many lies in the name of bisexual, 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 to the extent that the situation has become bad for others." And when it comes to unbelonging, bi people did not used to be accepted in the LGBTQ communities, but it has become better due to the impact of bi visibility. Surena, a trans woman, said, "Before, whenever bisexuality was mentioned, many would say many things that, yeah, their case is fake. Everyone say that I'm bi. Well, all the Iranians have become bi, but now I can see that it is easily expressed and nothing bad is said. Now we have developed. We are more open-minded. Why? Because I think some people have sacrificed themselves. They said it when it was hard to say it." Fariman, a bi-queer person, thinks that I can see that when Macchiato, one of the Radio Rangin Kaman, a rainbow radio program, talked about bisexuality, hosted a bi guest, it had a positive impact. But I think it is in our circle. In other circles, they are still not welcome. And when it comes to this deservingness, Ali, a queer person, said, "I wouldn't care if we were in a very open society where we were comfortable in a European country with no restriction for any sexual orientation. However, in the asylum situation, homosexuality has not been misused at the same level as bisexuality because it is hard for them to say that they are gay." So asylum system reproduced the binary asylum system force asylum seekers to compete over limited resources. Ramtin says that people are looking for someone to blame, and here that blamable person is bisexual. Asylum seekers may go even further and report each other to UNHCR authorities. And about invisibility, Sari, a researcher, says that 3 out of 7 bi cases rejected versus a few out of several hundreds of monosexual cases. An aid provider told me that he has met 400 or 500 gay and lesbian asylum seekers versus 30 asylum seekers who introduced themselves as bi. An activist believed that because of negative attitude in the LGBTQ communities toward bi asylum seekers are afraid of facing the same rejection from the UNHCR, and that's the reason that they are not visible in the asylum process. Participants were aware of the epistemic injustice and explained how bi erasure prevents bi people from making sense of their own experiences. For example, Fariman said, if I knew that sexual orientation is a spectrum, maybe I would search more. Mona said that I believe the less you know, the less you will be in an atmosphere to talk about it. And unconsciously, you will meet fewer knowledgeable people because of this. I was not in the atmosphere, and my only memory is not being recognized and being suppressed. Bi asylum seekers are invisible to the extent that bi negativity is also invisible. Although homophobia and transphobia are common words in the Persian-speaking LGBT communities, including among the Persian-speaking LGBT asylum seekers, a Turkish asylum activist who identifies as bi said, I did not hear the word biphobic. It is not common in the refugee communities. However, she has heard about the bi-negative attitude in the LGBTQ communities. Despite that, some asylum seekers were proud and optimistic. For example, Jayron, a bi woman, said, why should I tell a lie? My orientation is this. Well, I sought protection to be free to choose. Okay, I have two choices, but maybe I want to make this choice. I want to decide for myself because I don't know what will happen to me in 2 years. I'm very emotional and don't know who I may fall in love with. Jayron accepts that she has a choice, claim her right based on love, and reject the discretion argument used to suggest that bi people can choose to live with a different gender partner in their home countries. Ahura is optimistic. He says, I'm sure I will be accepted as a bisexual asylum seeker in any country because everything about me is real. I'm bisexual and there is no lie in it, and I don't have anything to hide. There have been different forms of bi-asylum activism around the world. For example, in UK, there have been campaign and letter to parliament in support of Horatia Edwards, or in US, there has been recommendation for bisexual asylum policy reform, or in Denmark, there has been support letter to LGBTQ asylum organization and asylum authorities. In Germany, they have organized events. So the question is, what can you do as by researchers and by activists? And on an unrelated note, as we mentioned in one of the other sessions, in Bi Plus Equal, we are conducting a survey about bi organizations and bi activists in Europe. If you are interested in participating, you can contact us. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Zeynab, for this great presentation. It was incredibly interesting. So if, again, anybody has any questions for Zeynab, just put them in the chat so we can answer them later. So now it's time for our second speaker, María Emilia Muñoz. She's recently obtained a master's degree in Italian studies from Heidelberg University. And in her thesis, she analyzed the beach setting as a queer space in Italian contemporary cinema. Her future research is oriented towards exploring the role of memory and queer cultural heritage in the construction of one's identity and sense of belonging to the LGBTQI+ community. And she's presenting today on this beautiful topic of the beach as a queer space. The title of her presentation is The Beach as a Queer Setting, Analysis of a Case Study from Italian Contemporary Cinema. So Emilia, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Alice. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me just prepare quickly the presentation. Now I share. Okay, you should be able to see, okay, the presentation.
It will arrive. It's just a bit slow.
Yes.
Very good.
Okay. Okay, now you see it. Okay, well, perfect. Hello, everyone. As Alice, Lucia said, my name is Emilia Muñoz, and I will be presenting part of my master's thesis in this presentation entitled The Beach as a Queer Setting, Analysis of a Case Study from Italian Contemporary Cinema. In it, I intend to demonstrate that the beach is an intrinsically queer space based on both its physical and symbolic traits, and as such, it is the perfect backdrop for queer relationships to develop, such as that between the non-monosexual male protagonists of the film David's Birthday. I will begin by briefly presenting the socio-cultural context of the beach and the symbolism connected to it, and then I will introduce the film and analyze how the setting conditions a plot. The beach is an environment that is located geographically on the margins, and because of this, is connected to figuratively marginal experiences, such as those related to the underworld. Queerness is being outside the social norms is also marginal, and so we can visualize the set of relationships as a triangle in which the beach, criminality, and the queer experience are linked by their marginal status, be that literal or metaphorical. This means that the connection between the beach and the queer experience is based on both spatial and social conditions. Now we'll briefly discuss the symbolism connected to the beach. Asterio Sabelli's work shows how the beach, with its inherent lack of societal constraints, has always been in contrast to the urban environment. In this context, queer experiences can take place more easily, and this has to do with the connotations attached to the beach. First of all, the beach is characterized by fluidity. On the one hand, on a physical level, because of the elements that compose it. For example, the sand and the water, both of which are mobile, never static. On the other hand, on a metaphorical level, in the sense that people can flow with those elements and with nature, and this is in contrast with the rigid social constraints that characterize the urban setting. Regarding the sea, its consistence makes it comparable to a mother's womb, a place in which one can be suspended and feel protected from the outside world. In short, a safe space. Another important point is that the beach is governed by different rules than those in effect in the urban space. In the beach, different ways of interacting and of behaving are possible, creating a sense of freedom, and they are connected to the corporality and to the gaze. At the seaside, more nudity is allowed, and one can watch other people more freely. In this respect, the beach is like a stage, an open-air theater where one puts themselves on display, looks at others, and is looked at. Finally, the beach is carnivalesque in nature. Carnival is a break from everyday life, during which the hierarchies that govern society are abolished. In the same way, in the beach, time and space are suspended, allowing people to interact freely, as being half-naked, wearing only a bathing suit generates a sort of social homogenization. Furthermore, people that might not mingle otherwise are brought together in this setting. All of this results in the possibility of exploring ways of socializing and of expressing oneself that differ from those imposed by the heteronormative society. Now we'll analyze the film David's Birthday to concretely illustrate these connotations associated with the beach. The film was directed by Marco Filiberti, and It was released in 2009. It centers on two couples of friends, Matteo and Francesca, and Sherry and Diego, who spend their summer vacation at a villa in Sabaudia, where they are joined by David, Sherry and Diego's son, and Leonard, Sherry's brother, both of whom live in the United States. Matteo, a psychoanalyst, is overwhelmed by an immediate attraction to David, which triggers an escalated tension within the group and puts his marriage in crisis. The tension culminates in tragedy when, on the day of David's birthday, Matteo and David have sex and are discovered by Matteo's wife. Shell-shocked, she flees to the street, where she is run over by a car and dies. It is interesting that, although the film was categorized as a gay-themed movie upon its release, it makes more sense to interpret the protagonists as non-monosexual rather than gay. Until Matteo encounters David again for the first time in years, he lives a happy life as a husband and father of an 8-year-old daughter. David, on his part, has a fling with the girl while on vacation, which ends not because of David's sexuality, but because he does not find people his age interesting enough. Thus, prior to their encounter, neither of them had felt uncomfortable with their perceived heterosexual identity, which, together with the same-sex attraction that develops, allows a spectator to interpret them as non-monosexual. As mentioned before, the two main characters come together during a vacation at the seaside, in a suspended time and place, and in this context, they spend a lot of time together. In addition, the freedom of the gaze and the higher level of nudity allowed in the beach make possible a particular kind of interaction between the two men. Regarding this, I want to mention the relevance of the dynamics of cruising in the film. Cruising is a confirmation of reciprocal interest or mutual acknowledgement of one's homosexual desire by means of a lingering gaze. In the beach, this is facilitated by the freedom of the gaze, and it is exploited by Matteo and David. They communicate their mutual desire openly by means of lingering gazes and touches instead of verbally, and it is this that moves the plot forward. In David's birthday, the desire between the characters is communicated through the formal features of the film, namely the employment of the shot-reverse shot technique, which links the gaze of two characters diegetically, as explained by Gary Needham. Just like in cruising, it is the looks that express the intentions of the protagonists, and this is conveyed through the alternation of shots. In David's birthday, the relationship between Matteo and David is made possible because of the setting, a marginal space where bodies and identities can flow, and where people find more freedom to act and to interact than elsewhere. Also, the cruising dynamic between the characters, which leads to the development of the relationship, is facilitated by the characteristics of the beach setting, where gaze and corporality play a major role. Thus, the seaside setting is crucial to the unfolding of the plot, providing the ideal backdrop for this story. To conclude, with this presentation, I have demonstrated the inherent connection between the beach and the queer experience, and shown how appropriate the beach setting is for a queer film such as David's Birthday. These are the works I have referenced in case anyone wants to consult them. And now I have nothing left to say, but thank you very much for your attention, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Emilia, also for staying spectacularly on time. It was a great presentation, like a presentation that is probably better than the movie, but this is me, the Italian that doesn't love melodrama, saying. So thank you, and again, if anybody has any questions, please leave in the chat. It's now Luisa's turn. So Luiza Servino, and she's a graduate psychologist from Pew CRS, 2019, currently working as a clinical psychologist specializing in CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, with a focus on providing care to LGBTQIA+ adults and neurodivergent individuals. Additionally, she serves as a collaborating researcher focusing on intimate partner violence research in bisexual women and on a project dedicated to reporting violence against LGBTQIA+ individuals from Porto Alegre, Brazil. And she presents a paper that was co-written also by Nicholas Robin, Vitória Pigatto, Arnoud, and Luiza Habigzang. And the title of her presentation is Social Support and Mental Health in Brazilian Bisexual Women. Luiza, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lucia. I will just share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So as Lucia said, my presentation title is Social Support and Mental Health in Brazilian Bisexual Women. So bisexuality is understood as a category of sexual identity that has many definitions, but is characterized by the attraction to more than one gender. And numerous studies within the LGBT+ community show that bisexual individuals are among the most affected by negative mental health outcomes, and bisexual women are disproportionately affected by health disparities when compared to heterosexual, lesbian, and gay individuals. And previous studies already indicated that social support can act as a buffer against negative mental health outcomes. And other studies revealed that experiences of stigma and low level of belonging are prevalent among bisexual individuals, including bisexual women. And specifically for this group, most of the support comes from attending the LGBT spaces, where people often find greater support from these communities than from contexts like friends and family. And this study aims to investigate perceived social support and mental health indicators, specifically stress, anxiety, and depression among a Brazilian sample of bisexual women. With our method, this is a cross-sectional and quantitative study with a sample of bisexual women conducted through online data collection. The instruments we used was social demographic data questionnaire, the multidimensional social support scale, and the depression, anxiety, and stress scale, the DAS-21. And with our analysis, descriptive and correlation analysis were performed using SPSS. With our results, a total of 1976 Brazilian women, the great majority of them being cisgender, aged from 18 or older participated, and 59.9% of them were white, followed by 18% being mixed race, 13% didn't specify their race, 7.8% were Black, 0.6% Asian, and 0.3% marked another race. And this first graphic here shows the results with the means, the averages of the mental health indicator scale that we used, being the average for depression was 13.9, being considered from mild to moderate. And then for anxiety, the average was 14.2, being considered mild, moderate. And for stress symptoms, the average was 15.3%, being considered mild. And this other graphic here shows the results of the averages of the perceived social support scale, being the average for perceived social support from friends 2.9, from family 3, and from others 3.5. And all these averages were considered low according to the cutoff point proposed by the author of the scale that we used. And this indicates that the participants have a low perception of social support, and also that bisexual women do not have a straightened support network. This image here shows the correlation between the mental health indicators, anxiety, depression, and stress, with the perceived social support. And the correlation was a Pearson analysis conducted using SPSS and showed that lower levels of perceived social support are inversely proportional with increased symptoms of stress, depression, and anxiety. And this yellow marker here shows the high levels of correlation, which means that stress, depression, and anxiety, they all correlated negatively with social support from friends, family, and others in a statistically significant manner, which means that the lower the perception of social support, the higher are the levels of stress, depression, and anxiety. As I said in the beginning, social support is really important, it's crucial for promoting mental health and overall well-being. And often bisexual women report a lack of perceived social support from various groups, including both the LGBTQ+ community and cisgender heterosexual individuals. And these experiences underscores how the feelings of low belonging, erasure, and invalidation, and the denial of bisexual identity can manifest across various groups, including the LGBT community, reinforcing the misconception that bisexuality is merely a phase or a transitional identity. And this is often explained by the term biphobia or binegativity, which refers to the direct stigma and discrimination faced by bisexual people. And significant mental health impacts, such as depression, anxiety, and psychological distress, have been shown in numerous prior studies involving bisexual people, including bisexual women, often stemming from experiencing biphobia or binegativity. And in our study, the participants in the sample reported greater social support in the other categories, suggesting that bisexual women perceive more support from people or groups outside family and friends. But the instrument we use does not investigate who these other are, indicating the need for further research to better understand the support spaces found by this population. And also, the findings of the study align with previous research, emphasizing the relationship between low perceived social support and elevated levels of mental health impacts. And this relation can be attributed to many interrelated factors, including high levels of binegativity or biphobia and victimization. And consequently, bisexual people are at an increased risk of internalizing negative attitudes towards their identity and anticipating hostility and rejection from others. And finally, understanding the relationships between social support and mental health in bisexual women is essential for identifying factors to promote their quality of life. And it's also really important to consider that the specific experiences of bisexual women is crucial, particularly in relation to how intersection social categories as race and gender influence their quality of life and their feelings of being seen, validated, and a part of a community alongside the broader rights owed to these populations. And also, it's important to conduct research on the specific experiences of bisexual women within their context to ensure their rights, promote mental health, and reduce the stigmas associated with bisexuality and other social markers. This was our references, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Luísa. Thank you for this inspiring presentation. I also loved the little dot pointer, but that's me being a nerd. So
It's
sorry.
from Canva.
It's a brilliant thing. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we now have our final presenter. And again, if you have any questions for Luísa, just put them in the chat so we can have a bit of a discussion. Our final presenter is Victor Banerjee, and a bisexual researcher from India who is passionate about weaving an empathetic thread of loneliness and solitude among fellow bisexual males through the everyday performative dynamics of emotional geography of space and place. His PhD thesis intersects the critical realism of space and loneliness of closeted bisexual men of India. And Victor today is presenting a talk about the everyday affective geography of bisexual men of India through the intersectionality of caste. Victor, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks a lot. Let me share my PPT. So good evening everyone from India. Today I'm actually going to talk about the everyday affective geography of bisexual men of India through the intersectional glass of loneliness. To start with, I will just say that in the fluidic landscape of heterogeneous and multicultural plurality, India always exudes a unique symbolic manifestation of queer culture in which bisexuality and bisexual social body fuse myriad intersectional layers to navigate through the fold and faults of the affective and sexual geography as mediated by the conjoining process of space and place. The enshrouded diversity of rich experience and the shifting social reality of spontaneous, undirected playfulness of bisexual men is anchored into the variegated sociocultural landscape of India. It generates a deconstructive rhizome of intersectional geography in which the positionality of caste and its ritualistic hierarchy plays a central role in shaping the everyday socio-affective trajectory of love, eroticism, and friendship. Caste system is a multifaceted social stratification that operate on inherited hierarchical social status, often creating a graded and structural inequality between the positionality of each and every individual situated into a complex social equivalence. In India, primarily, if you are taking born in Hinduism, your identity and your everyday socio-cultural embodiment gets directly connected to a caste group, and that caste group basically determines how you are supposed to behave, how you are supposed to perform, and how you should maintain your family and your immediate kingship. Therefore, the vector of caste with its substantive socio-cultural and socio-political role and representation connect the everyday spaces and the vital core component of an individual's identity. It finds its unique impression and the critical manifestation of the rules and regulation ritualistically enshrined and juxtaposed by the institutional and corporeal control of religion and nation. Paradoxically, caste also create a mind-formed manacle of abstract universalism and the rooted system of normative romanticism. And that's where the trick is. Indian bisexual men oftentimes break and disintegrate their own caste barrier and caste structure to create their liminal sexuality. And that liminal sexuality can basically operate by romanticism and by the marital status in which they are automatically getting connected with, and how they are breaking the dominant caste group and map their everyday haptic of romanticism and sexism with someone who is belonging to the lower caste. That I'm coming to the next point. So B.R. Ambedkar, a noted social and political crusader and the founder of Indian Constitution, elicits that caste system elicit the ascending order of reverence and descending order of disdain. and contempt through which the notion of purity and impurity is segregated and performed accordingly. Thus, the stigma is often encoded with the bodily abomination and the character of the behavioral blemishes. So the Indian caste system basically operates in this direct dimension. That is, the top apex of the pyramid is dominated by Brahmins, who are the priest and teacher. The Kshatriya are the warriors and the ruler. The Vaishyas are the merchant traders and farmers. And Shudras are laborer, and Dalit, which is situated in the lowest rungs of the caste hierarchies, are backward and oppressed. These caste hierarchies often get encoded into our bodily imprint. For example, Brahmins are actually considered as the head, which is the temple of the knowledge. Kshatriyas basically denote the deltoid section, that is the rulers and the administrators and the warrior. Vaishyas denote the stomach as well as the thigh, which are the artisans, tradesmen, farmers and merchant. Shudras are the manual labor, which denote the feet, and Dalit also denote the feet. Now coming to my main and in the central point, I will say that the constitutive psychosocial interplaying of caste beget an intricate relationship between the systemic regimen of power, affect and sexuality. It always interweave the anchored and the subsequent deconstructive landscape of a deviated, twisted, ruptured and weaponized form of vulnerability, as well as the political production of the reclamation of space by which bisexual bodies actively navigate and challenge the heteropatriarchal mode of hegemonic gaze. The conspicuous repetitive problematization of the monolithic normative structure of showing love and connecting the dots of bi-queer eroticism is enframed into a complicated topology of numerous cracks and crevices that cannot be overtly mapped and sculpted into the visible layer if we take caste into the center stage. In India, primarily, the microcosmic social reality of caste is further subtended into numerous other intersectional categories. For example, microcaste, Varna, and in the Jati system, for which the node of mapping the cartographic underpinning among bisexual men is predefined by the social location he is inhabiting, his immediate kinship, as well as the covert subversion he enact to map the haptic of his desire, depending on the contextual frame of the geographical space and place whereby he is located into. And therefore, by the repetitive performance of his constitutive fluidity, a bisexual man in India always creating the new sacred ritual of what Slavoj Zizek says, an obscene jusa. So I will just like to share a very interesting and an important poem. So it is actually a poem that is written by a Dalit queer activist in India, which intersect the critical landscape of queerness and sexuality with the contingent role of caste that shape and punctuate his everyday lived experience of bi men. So he is saying that I started touching myself thinking in school of all the boy who bullied me. I reimagined the lips which had abused me, biting my nipples instead. I was hard. That hardness felt strange, unexpected. It was then that I started fantasizing my abuser. I felt dirty, desiring those dirty men and the girls mocking me. You see, our caste was dirty, an untouchable caste, a dirty chamar. Chamars are the one who are into leather and in the tanning sector. In the night, that dirty bisexual queerness reared its erotic head, and it wrestled with my dirty caste, redefining what my desire mean to be and how I am supposed to perform and subvert my dirty impure caste that connect the antenna of manifold gaze of lust, disgust and desire. So caste often gets its particular subtle imprint not only into the physical and in the tangible space, but also in the virtual space, whereby a Muslim bisexual guy with whom I was interacting was saying that to all the Hindu guys who are blaming us. It's not our fault that we have nice dick and stronger body, that you and we alone do not breed your mom, daughter, sister. They themselves come to us, seduce us. So we breed them because they are great in shape. It's not our fault that we just satisfy them. So stop blaming us. Even sometimes sissy guys with chubby ass do get breeded by us. I am feeling so horny. And here is this Hindi narrative of a particular bisexual guy who is playing with his own religion and caste to frame his day-to-day bisexuality by interlinking his sexual haptic with threesome. So here are these two important prominent bisexual activists in India. They are a couple also, and it is their visit to the Pride Month of Delhi that happened in 2009, where they are trying to bring out the notion of caste. So with this, I stop my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor, for this very fascinating presentation. So now we have 10 minutes almost for questions that may come from our attendees. So I've seen comments in the chat, but if anybody wants to ask anything to our speakers, please feel free to unmute your mic. You can also, I see Theo says, thank you. They have no question, but.
I have one question basically. Can I ask?
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Yeah, I have one question for Zeynab. Like you were talking about the testimonial smothering. Okay, so recently I was actually reading a paper about that smothering comes from a different strand of discrimination, and that discrimination can be proximal as well as distal. So while you were speaking about the different kinds of the narrative into that asylum setup, did you actually map their psychoanalytical geography in the way that is it only because that they are internalizing that negative attitude by themselves that they are ashamed to reveal about themselves, or is it actually the dual force of the homophobia and the biphobia that is kind of making them more and more isolated and smothering, for which they do not want to tell about themselves and the shame that is coming through it? So I would like to clarify this doubt of mine. Yeah, thank you.
Well, as I said, they were mostly proud of their sexual orientation, and they were very smart at disclosing their sexual orientation. So they knew in every situation with every audience which aspect of their sexual orientation and also their gender identity they are safe to disclose. And based on that, they would decide. So it's my research is a sociological research, not a psychological one. And I focus on asylum as a structure that discriminate against asylum seekers, especially as on bisexual asylum seekers. So when they were with activists or other asylum seekers or researchers or with reporters, journalists who were not biphobic, they would feel free to talk about their bisexuality or their non-binary gender identity or their queerness. But in the asylum process, when they were talking with a case officer or with other asylum seekers who were biphobic, or they would not able to understand their complicated gender identity. They knew how to censor themselves in order to survive in those conditions.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Zeynab. I see a comment in the chat that I think it references your speech as well. John G says that they're working with bi-asylum seekers in England, UK, and they would appreciate any pointers to make the process, I think, to optimize their process and their options of success in this. So do you have any pointers to give?
Well, it's really difficult for the lawyers who work with specific cases, because obviously they want to increase the chance of asylum seekers to be granted asylum. So they have to kind of reproduce those stereotypes. So there are different studies that shows that lawyers sometimes actually suggest by asylum seekers to seek asylum as gay or lesbians, or to not talk about being non-binary or queer, because they want to make it simple and understandable for the case officers, because from their previous experiences, they know that it is not easy for the case officers. So, for example, in one of the big cities, in one of the famous organizations in the UK, I have a PowerPoint that activists were suggesting asylum seekers not to talk about their bisexuality, not because they were biphobic, because they wanted to help them, because they knew that it will make everything more complicated for them. And that's the reason that we have to work on this issue, because it's a general problem all around the world, that the UNHCR guidelines talk about bisexuality and biphobia, but in practice, case officers find it complicated, and then lawyers and activists suggest asylum seekers not to talk about it, and this circle just continues.
Thank you, Zeynab. And I mean, I think it's very interesting how in this case you need a different narrative to be, I mean, to pursue your goal, which is, of course, obtaining asylum. And so the matter of the importance of the narrative around our identities, it's central. So, I mean, in the very different capacity of your talk and Emilia's analysis of a movie, and Luisa's analysis of her cases, and Victor's story, we have different words where the narrative we provide are actually the point, and our non-monosexual identities are unreadable for the majority of the word. So we find ourselves not translatable to the rest of the word. Just as a general thought. Are there any other questions from the floor, from the attendees? It doesn't seem so. No. Okay, so I just wanted to, I mean, I have just one quick question for Emilia as the resident media person here. So, do you think there are other spaces of marginality, such as the beach, that can allow those identities to I mean, express themselves in the media, because the beach, there are so many different movies about the beach that tell similar stories. Have you found any other liminal space out there?
I haven't searched so much, to be honest, because I wanted to focus on the beach from the start. But spaces where queer males socialize and seek relationships come to mind, like parks, or well, there is this Fersan Özpetek film about a sauna. So those kind of places are the first that I can think of. And generally, it's interesting that it's not maybe the places per se, but the context, like places at night where which become liminal and allow for experimentations that don't take place during daytime. So yeah, I should like think more in depth about this question because it's very interesting. But yes, that's all I can answer for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, for sure there are open spaces to experimentation. That's, I think, I mean, notwithstanding the space, it's the ambiguous borders of the space that allow for more experimentation. And you're right that usually we see men, I mean, male presenting people in the media, you know, being able to do this sort of experimentation. And as Luisa's speech and talk and research is focused on women, I was just curious. I mean, why did you focus on women particularly? So there was the intention of focusing on one gender identity because you think that there are so many differences in different genders, or?
Wait, is that for me or for Luiza?
Oh, for Luiza.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you repeat the question, Lucia,
Yeah,
please?
because you focus on women in your
Yeah.
study, and yes, there are there are so many differences in terms of gender identities. I was wondering when the decision of focusing on women happened, and if you plan on focusing also on other gender identities.
My presentation is taken from a PhD study. As I am a collaborator of this study, this research that is specifically with women, bisexual women, cisgender and trans, but women. But because it has to be more specific, being a PhD study, but I have personally a curiosity towards other identities because bisexuality it's about bi plus and non-binary and not specifically one. It has a lot of difference and gender differences over the experience of bisexuality. So I'm sure that there's a lot of other specifically experiences that should be more studied and researched. But because it's a study that is focused more in this specific gender, I'm presented about bisexual women experiences. But I have a lot of curiosity towards another gendered identities that it's also affected by negativity, by phobia, and also on other experiences of discrimination. But not only that, but also another kind of experiences that should be more explored. I don't know if I answered.
Yeah, no, thank you. And I know how narrow case studies for PhDs must be, so I'm totally with you. We have to pick very specific topics.
Yeah.
Thank you all. So we have run out of time for our panel. We're perfectly on time though, so kudos to everybody. It was a very fascinating discussion, so thank you so much to all the presenters, and see you in the other streams later in the day. Thank you.